So, good morning, everyone, here in Glasgow, COP26. Good morning, everyone following us live on YouTube. It's my pleasure and honor to present you Professor Graydon from Euclid University. She is also with the delegation Mediators Beyond Borders International, and she will present her latest book, Creating a Masterpiece, The Arts and Climate Change Conflict. Professor.
Thank you very much, Alex, and thank you very much to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I'm very, very pleased to be here and to talk to everyone about my new book, which is Creating a Masterpiece, The Arts and Climate Change. I'm going to talk to you about another book that I've written. This is for adults and a book that is for everyone here and everyone in the academic world. But I've also written a second book for children, and I'm going to be presenting that as well to the UNFCCC. Both of them will be gifted to the UNFCCC, and you'll hear a little bit more about the things that I do on the ground to show what the arts provide a new lens. So I need to, oh, I see, I have all these different things to press. This is, this is fun. Okay, so you see the name of the book, Creating a Masterpiece, The Arts and Climate Change Conflict, More Than Words. So that to me is important, because what we are doing, what I am doing, is saying the arts provide a new lens, and it's not just words, because I give credit to Greta Thunberg when she says, blah, 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 you people, blah, blah, blah. What are you doing? Well, what I'm saying is we do other things. We are doing other things. I'm very supportive of the work that the UNFCCC is doing for climate change. And so it's going to be more than words. So you can see I've said, and this is COP26, a historic event, very much a historic event. But I'd like to just mention something from, if any of you know Woody Allen, he's a film producer. Woody Allen, 1979. Woody Allen was speaking to a graduating class, and he said, humanity is at a crossroads. He said, if we take one path, it leads to hopelessness and despair. But if we take the other path, it's extermination. I hope we choose the right path. And 40 years later, this is now 40 years later, Woody Allen's words were at the same point. We are at the crossroads, and we have to make the right choice. And what's happening here at COP26, this is a historic event. So what is happening, the partnerships, the work that is being done is very important. I guess I'm not quite as loud as the guys downstairs, but that's okay, that's fine. Anyway, so what I am saying is I'm providing an arts lens, so it's more than words. I'm using photographs, I'm using paintings, I'm using graphic artwork, and I'm using theater. And so what that does is it talks about climate change and what can be done, not just the arts alone, but with groups such as the groups that I work with, Mediation Beyond Borders International, and groups of collaborators. We work together with the arts works together with these groups to try and show what can be done to deal with some of the issues that arise because of climate change conflict. So with that, so we use the language of the creative arts, not the language of blah, 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 the language of pictures, the language of photography, etc. And so what that does is first of all, the arts are excellent to create awareness. It shows you see a photograph of what's happening in Africa, animals dying because they don't have enough water, etc. It's not good stuff. But so it creates awareness, but that's not enough. You then have to work together with the communities and work together with the UNFCCC, work together with communities or cities in the area. And so what you do is you try and deal with the conflict. We cannot resolve the conflicts anymore. I mean, we're dealing with climate change. Climate change is not resolvable. It's a matter of how we deal with it. And so how we deal with it is we transform it into something positive as best we can for all people. That's all we can do, is try and transform it to something we can work with. Now, as I said, the masterpiece is not just a painting or a photograph. The masterpiece is because it is guided by the principles of the UNFCCC and the principles of the Paris Agreement. That is the masterpiece. And so you're going to see that even though this is a masterpiece, the masterpiece changes. The masterpiece, we're only at we started at COP21 in Paris. Well, I've been to several COPs now between Paris and here today, and we are still working. We are still working on this masterpiece. But thank goodness the masterpiece continues to be guided by the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. And that's what we are trying to do today, and hopefully we will continue to do for the next few COPs. So with that, so I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk to you about what I'm going to call them the new icons that you're going to see. And I'm hoping that these two new icons will be used by not just the UNFCCC, but by people around the world to say, this is what the Paris Agreement is and why it is so important and why it is so vulnerable. I mean, the Paris Agreement has brilliant principles, brilliantly written by the UNFCCC, but unfortunately or fortunately, it is also very vulnerable, as we will see. So here's what happened. I wrote an article when the United States left the Paris Agreement, and I asked my graphic design person to please create a graphic design to show the vulnerability of the Paris Agreement, because of course the US had left, and so the poor Eiffel Tower is starting to melt. People have criticized me and say, the Eiffel Tower can't melt. I said, this is an icon, this is art. But so in that sense, we see that the Eiffel Tower is not standing the way it should be standing. It's in turmoil, we will say. So the next, I've written this children's book, The Life on Planet Earth, My Story, which is a story for children. And it's to once again say the importance of the Paris Agreement and what we can do to make sure that this Eiffel Tower remains stable and it stands up to all of the facts that people are having to deal with, the different issues of climate change. So in that sense, that's where we are now. We are at a stage where we can still say the Paris Agreement is in place, and we're working hard to keep sure that it stays stable and straight. So what I've said is the art lens provides a safe place, because that's one thing that words say a lot, but when we have visual ways of looking at the issues of climate change, it provides a different lens that we can look at, we can work with. And it gives us opportunities to, I'm not going to say play around, but it gives us a lot of opportunities to work with different images to show what the situation is today, but also to show what the situation should be. And I want to refer to one other artist who has been working with the UNFCCC last year, is Lorenzo Quinn. And he's an artist that does sculpture. And I don't know if you remember, but in Vienna, all of the water, so much water, and I mean everything's underwater. And he had visual images of hands trying to hold back the water, and that was so powerful. The images that he was producing, And so what he was trying to do is tell people this. I remember him saying in some of the material that he presented, he said, it's almost, I'm providing this to say, we're so sorry for what we have done. Please, please give us, please help us to maintain the earth as we want it to be. So in that sense, again, the artist is so important. And so my book goes through a lot of different arts. It has how we look at what is important, what causes, what creates impact. And I spent a lot of time looking at art history and what it means to create impact. And so in that sense, we see that impact is it's more than just the painting. It's emotion. It's a feeling. It has to touch people. It has to touch people. So in that sense, that's what we're looking for, is something that has emotion and a sense of importance, and it creates the impact. So, and you'll see that I say it allows us to explore, but also what I'm trying to do is looking at what's happening here at the COP26. People are saying, okay, we are creating some partnerships. We are making sure that there are some people are saying no more deforestation. We have to have, we have to stop some of the things that we're doing. And so in that sense, it allows us to create global pacts, global agreements to address climate change conflict. Now, I want to provide 5 examples, and I'm going to do this fairly briefly. What I've done is I've provided links, so because I'm not able to go through all of the work that everyone has done. I'm going to mention the first link, which is a work that I've been involved in, and that's with Mediation Beyond Borders International and a group from England called Educcate Global, and that's on climate change. Educcate is an educational group that has schools around the world, and they are working very hard to try and introduce climate change to all students. And so in that sense, the work that Mediation Beyond Borders and Educcate are, what we are doing together is we're putting together, using the creative arts, a peaceful planet teacher training dealing with climate change and conflict. And so what we're doing, for example, looking at photography, looking at some of the horrible things that are happening in Africa. When I say horrible, I mean loss of livelihood, loss of livestock, etc. And saying, okay, what we can do then is work with communities, try and work together, collaborate, deal through mediation so that there's not so much violence. Land holding, for example, is an issue. And so in that sense, the best way to deal with that is through work such as mediation. The second example is virtual reality. And this was really interesting because this is from Baltimore, rising sea levels. And what they did is they used virtual reality to show people what it could be like in 10 years. And so the people are saying, when when the water is so high, it's 7 feet high. I'm using old, I guess, English, or from my world in Canada, it's feet, not meters, but when it's so high, it's above your head. And when people realized how the water could raise so high, they said, okay, something has to be done. So in Baltimore, they have adopted new ways of dealing with the rising sea levels. And that was a result of people responding to having the experience of virtual reality. So that to me was very useful. The next one, item 3, is an artist from New York and Canada who's Chantal Bilodeau, and she deals with the theater and the arts. And she has theater that is around the world, theater with climate change issues. And again, what I have provided is all of the universities that she has listed, and that's the link, to show all the universities that are offering courses in climate change and the arts. So that's useful. And the fourth one is one of the most well-known groups is Cape Farewell, and that's from England, and we're dealing with issues in Dorset, England, and the fact, again, climate change issues that are causing problems with the rivers, and how the rivers how the rivers are causing problems with the agricultural industry in that area. And they're working together, again, with communities, everybody working. So the visual is extremely important. So David Buckland, who's the director, he's the person who puts together the visual, and then, as I said, works with the communities to put things together. Now, the last item is item number 5, which is my book. And my book, as I said, I'm going to be making donations to the UNFCCC from the proceeds of my book, as well as presenting the book. Now, there's the book. And then now it's your turn. So we have a group here, and what I want to do is engage you. You've heard what I've had to say about how we have a new lens. The new lens is the creative arts. And what I would like to do is give you some time. It's hard for me sometimes with this microphone. It's because I don't put it close enough to my mouth. Okay, what I was going to say, I want you to just take about 5 minutes, come up with some ideas about how you could create your vision about, you've been here for almost 2 weeks. We're nearing the end of COP26. I want you to create your vision and provide, I asked for some pens and papers, but we can't because of COP26 regulations. We can't have pens and papers. But what I want you to do, please, is I will ask some people to come forward and give their vision about COP26. So your vision of COP26, what you see is being created here. So that will be your addition to the masterpiece. So we'll just give everybody a few moments to do this. And since I know a few people here, I'm going to call on a few people. Okay, very good, Maria. Thank you very much. Yeah, would you like, well, do you want to have it just go down there? Yeah. Fine. Okay. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor. I'll also, if you don't mind, remove my mask. It's quite challenging to speak like this. Thank you for this very inspiring presentation. It's again something different what we have heard over the past weeks and days. And it's really interesting how you are picturing COP26 through art. Art is something which, art, sport, food, these are the activities and media who actually bring people together. And I see COP26 as, event about people, because it is an event to save our planet, but actually it's us who polluted it and who brought the planet to this situation, but it's also us who will be suffering the most. So first what I see is people. And I see different people. I see delegates, I see, representative of the vulnerable groups of indigenous people, women, children. My colleague proudly says that we had the youngest participant who was 1 year old here recently at the pavilion. But, I also see partners, a lot of partnerships coming forward. And this is my role here. I work as a head of partnerships and resource mobilization at UNFCCC, although I joined only recently. But I see a huge appetite for action, a huge appetite to help, to help our planet. So of course, we are also awaiting the results of our distinguished delegates and negotiators. But the way how I would picture, if I was painting a picture here, it would be connecting the dots, seeing a lot of dots of different colors, colors representing vulnerable groups, colors representing partners, colors representing corporations, companies, professors and academia, like yourself. And what is very important is that, us at UNFCCC, we are trying to create that space to bring everybody to the table. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that vision. That vision is brilliant in the sense of, the dots of different colors. I mean, it's a beautiful vision, and I believe that to me, it represents exactly what is happening at the various COPs. I mean, we're coming with so many different people all coming together, and so that is an excellent vision. So excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, Greg Walker has some. This is Greg from MBBI.
Charalee, thank you so much. This is really fascinating, and appreciate you sharing your ideas. As I listen to you and think about the creative arts, I think about different generations. When children are young, they are all artists. And we don't edit their art. We encourage them, whether they're 5 years old or 7 years old, to be creative. And as they get older, we discourage their creativity, perhaps. So I think I would love to hear your thoughts on how we can engage truly young people in the primary grades. And the second thought is, I teach college and have for many years. And I try to adapt to the changes in my students. And through my students, I've learned about social media sites like TikTok. And I think about how my students spend time on TikTok, on Instagram. They don't necessarily watch the evening news. They're not watching Sky News and the BBC. They're getting their information through these social media sites, which, of course, have all sorts of weird stuff, but also some pretty good content. So I'm curious about your thoughts about how, in fact, the creative arts can come through the social media sites that perhaps the secondary level and college level students are paying attention to. So kind of the primary grades and then maybe the college age, your thoughts on how the creative arts might operate there.
Right.
So, thank you.
I'm very good. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pick up both your comments as well as Maria's comments, and that is, first of all, what we are doing. I mean, we talked yesterday. I was at a meeting that talked about food and nutrition, and of course people are saying that's an important issue that has to be dealt with. Well, the arts are also an important issue. The new lens to be able to show the importance of the climate change, of the Paris Agreement and its objectives. So again, I'm not going to say that we should have a special COP for the arts. I'm saying it needs to be integrated a little bit more thoroughly throughout the COPs. And so, for example, I first came here, I saw the cartoons. And so to answer your question, cartoons are an excellent way of sharing this information at the level that you're talking about. So downstairs, that was one of the first things I saw was the cartoons. I went, wow, that is brilliant. And they're really good cartoons. And somebody was telling me that there's a footprint, I guess downstairs. I have to go get my footprint taken, or I forget, it's downstairs to get my footprint. And these are the sorts of things that engage people. They do. And when I saw recently, just down a little bit down, I forget what it is, but anyways, a little bit farther along, you can have you can get your planet, get your ID for your planet ID as a Earthling ID. So I have to go back and get my Earthling ID. So things like that, they sound, they sound in some ways childish, but they can be dealt with on Instagram. They can be dealt with. This is the social media type of world that we are now living in, and we have to recognize that. I mean, when I recognize, I don't like Facebook, but I spend so much time on Facebook because all my relatives in Northern Ireland, they love Facebook. So I'm a Facebook person, you have to integrate in the world that you are living. And so with the ideas that I heard from both of you, we need to work with the young people. And so this little book, I mean, the Creating a Masterpiece that I am presenting here is, as I said, more for this is your college students, Greg, and the Life on Planet Earth, my story. The children tell their story, and it starts out with two principles. The principle of biodiversity is one of them, and dealing with the ecosystem is the other. Just two very, very simple ideas. And so the children then tell their story about their life on planet Earth. They go through, and then they are asked, what is the Paris Agreement? So the children have to do some research. They have to learn, what is this thing the Paris Agreement. And my friend said, Charalee, these are little children. And I said, little children already know about the Paris Agreement. They know more than we do sometimes about the Paris Agreement. But, you know, this is the type of thing that will engage young people, hopefully, for a long time. And so that, I believe, addresses both of your questions, which how to do it is to integrate the arts, the visual, the footprints, to integrate the arts into the concepts of the Paris Agreement and the UNFCCC. And so that can be done with the visual. Okay, any other question? Yes, go ahead. I believe there's a question. Oh, okay, good.
Thank you very much, and I totally agree. The vital importance of the arts, it's really, especially for kids and engaging them. I guess, I mean, one question is something that I guess we're all struggling with is we just don't realize the impact of our daily decisions and actually the sacrifices we each need to make. And it's questionable whether even the organizers here realize that, given that you can eat meat here, plastic wrapped food, et cetera, the emissions that aren't being offset by all of us attending here. And I wonder if that's actually a key thing that we need to engage with more in education and with kids. I think they don't have any hesitation making that very simple and important connection, that the importance of biodiversity, looking after our planet. And I think ultimately that is the key simple message.
Right. Sorry, okay, go ahead. Yeah, the microphone's kind of cutting off a little bit. Okay. Yeah, great. I'd like you to expand that a little bit.
Just that, you know, I think that the children know the message. We know the message. It's quite simple. We need to use less, consume less, recycle more, be more conscious of the carbon impact of our decisions, which is so difficult because those equations are so complicated. But I think we need to engage kids in thinking that it requires a different way of living, consuming less, living in a different way, which is going to require sacrifices from us all. So I think if we can start to integrate that into children's education, that's the way change is going to happen, because none of us are making the changes in our personal lives. And I think none of us realize the significance of the impacts and the changes we need to make to actually get anywhere near the promises that are being made and constantly missed. Mm-hmm. So your work's really interesting, and I really totally agree. It's really important. But I think that's missing from the debate with kids, the hard realities, which I think they grasp, but yeah.
Right, I hear what you're saying, and you make some very good points. Like, we need to do, I mean, here at the COP, we are addressing a lot of the big issues, but we need to engage the young people, right? Always engage the young people. So yesterday at the nutrition, at the food information, there was a young person that was speaking. So I wish that I had someone from our MBBI group that was a youth from our MBBI youth group, for example. We need to bring the young people into this. And so, unfortunately, I do not have that person here with me today, but we need to engage the young people very much in each organization that we are dealing with. So it's one thing to tell to provide the visual images. So I'm hoping that my icons of the Eiffel Tower, that is, for me, the image that's representing Paris COP21 is the Eiffel Tower. It's a very good image. And to show its vulnerability, it can sway. It can really sway. And it can, when people do not commit, and what I'm going to say is, you're going to see my vision. COP26, the Glasgow commitment is my vision. So I'm going to say, I feel that the commitments that are being made here about stopping deforestation, the cities saying, and the businesses saying, we are stepping up. The UN back in, the United States back in the Paris Agreement. All of these are very important. The Eiffel Tower gets straighter and straighter and straighter. And when I see some of our countries are saying, they're not moving forward enough with their NDCs. And I'm saying, okay, the Eiffel Tower is starting to lean again. Not good. We need to have the Eiffel Tower based on that second icon, a straight Eiffel Tower that will stand forever and ever and stay very strong. And so at the end, I say, this is my vision for COP26. It's a happy planet. It's a happy, I mean, I want to be positive because I feel that we have all the beautiful principles. We have all of the right, we have the right ideas. We have the right people. We can bring in the arts. We can bring in the, as I said, the masterpieces created by the objectives that are set out in the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement. And so it's just a matter of saying, let's put it all together, bring in the children, bring in all of the you know, and as the young man said, we need to have those children engaged. And so are there, with that, okay, go ahead, Gray, more question?
Just one last thing, certainly. We're all really appreciate this presentation. At 11:30 today in Action Room 1, you may have seen this in the schedule, is a special session on the arts and science of climate change. And Charalee, I know that, again, is something you've thought a lot about. How do we use the arts to communicate climate science as well as climate action? So 11:30 today, if you didn't see that on the schedule.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Greg. So with that, I believe I have half an hour, so I don't know where we are because I don't have my, I think we're at half an hour, I would think. So, okay. Okay, I'm not that great with time when I forget my watch. You know, I left the apartment. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Great, thank you. There you are.
Thank you so much, Professor. It was great.